Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are listening to this and watching on YouTube to the Build It Better podcast, powered by FrameCAD. I'm your host, Robert Johnson, and today we are privileged to have a discussion with Joe Doxey, FrameCAD Division Manager with Douglas Colony out of the Denver, Colorado area. And he graced us with his presence in studio. You're going to be blown away. You're going to want to bookmark this one, go back and catch it multiple times. He's a numbers geek. Let's jump out and join Joe. I'm not anti-wood. Well, how's that for a start? I'm not anti-concrete. I'm not anti-masonry. What I am is pro-cold form steel. So that's what we talk here. You can build with all the rest, or you can build with the best. It's up to you. We just hope to convince you to build it better. I feel better now that I got that
Got that off the chest.
Yeah. It was like I thought about that on the way here today, and I thought, I'm just going to say it and get it right out there. With all that being said, thanks for joining us. I'm Robert Johnson, your host of the Build It Better podcast, powered by FrameCAD. And today, we are absolutely thrilled and honored that Joe Doxey, am I saying it right?
Yeah,
Perfect.
Perfect.
I usually ask that ahead of time, so you're getting the cut version. Joe Doxey, FrameCAD Division Manager for Douglas Colony. And he came to do this in person, in studio. So kudos to you.
Pleasure.
Welcome.
We're excited to be here, excited to talk. You won't say it, I will. I hate wood.
Okay. I was kind of being the nice guy.
Nice there.
Yeah. I get it so often, it's like when we start talking about it, they're like, oh, you're just anti-wood. No, I'm not anti-wood. I honestly, I've never built with it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've never. And I started when I was like 15 years old in the trades, I've been in commercial construction. So I've never really fooled with wood. I mean, occasionally here and there, I've had to cut a 2x4 if I forced myself. But I've just never done it. So I'm not anti-wood. I just think there's a better alternative.
Yeah. And I'd say, so I've worked with both. Mm-hmm. I'd agree. I don't know that I'm anti-wood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's times when you need it and it's going to be the right application.
Right.
There is something better, right? Technologies advance, things advance. And wood is not, I looked up something this week. Dimensional lumber was the new thing to do in 1924 was the year that they decided to have that happen. And since then, I don't know what's changed about wood except for it gets dried faster and warps a lot more than it did 30 years ago.
Yeah, 1924. It's amazing. We've mentioned this in other conversations, but it's always the new thing. People are scared of the change, and we say this often here. And the whole purpose of this podcast is to shed some light on cold form steel and prefabricated cold form steel, offsite construction, et cetera. But it was this way when you went from copper to PEX. And, when you remember, copper's never going to go away. No, we're never going to do it. And now you don't find copper anywhere. So, I don't know why we fight so hard.
Yeah. I think education's a big part of it. I think a lot of the times the long-term cost savings, right, it's scary to change anything, first of all. I think as humans, that's a hard thing for us to do. But really to see the benefits until you actually do it, it's really hard to see how it's going to. Yeah, and we work with lots of contractors as they start using cold form steel, start pre-panelizing. Suddenly they say, I can't believe I haven't been doing this for the last 15 years.
100% of the customers that I have ever dealt with, that's exactly their words. I have not had one that's come back and said, oh, man, that was a mistake.
Yeah, we should go right back to stick building this out of wood.
What is Douglas Colony? And
that's Douglas Colony. So we are a subcontractor out of Denver, Colorado area, service the Front Range. Been in business for 75 years, which is awesome. Great leadership. No, not yet. A couple of people have heard of us along the Front Range. Specialize in exterior skins of buildings. roofing, sheet metal, waterproofing, solar. Really, our vision as a company was to say, hey, we want a turnkey solution that you can get your whole envelope done.
That's
with
amazing.
one
I
company.
never knew that Douglas Colony did roofing.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's our main flagship.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
That's the big deal. And so kind of through the vision of our company was to, hey, we want to not only make things more turnkey, but also provide solutions to help things speed up. We were one of the first FrameCAD partners in the U.S. I think had the first actual running machines here, which was
How long
great.
ago?
Oh man, 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, I think is when the machines were finally delivered. We bought them
Yeah.
before that. I always say we're the first ones because we bought them first.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes a little bit of time to get them here, but got them set up in 2014. So we've been running for close to 10 years with the machines, which has been great. The vision was, hey, we are doing everything outside of those framing walls, and we're waiting.
Yeah.
We're waiting and we're waiting and we're waiting.
Went back to the framer.
Yeah. Why isn't the framer taking so long? What do we need to do to have that speed up? Our president, as he was at a metal con, saw the machines and instantly said, hey, there's a lot of things that are going to be happening in construction, some pinch points, some hard things we're all going to have to deal with. That's the kind of solution we need. We're very much all about technology, latest folding equipment for MCM composite panels. So we have MCM composite panels, sheet metal roofing, flashings. We're always looking for the next piece of equipment.
Are you doing pre-finished panels?
We are. We just rolled out our first sample it goes framing, a zip wall system, air barrier, and then a metal wall panel on the outside of it, all in one piece. We're super excited to be able to try to get to that point. No pre-finished stucco or anything like that, just framing.
So for those of you that are just listening in, go to the YouTube channel, Build It Better podcast, and catch this on video. And you've got to watch this time lapse. Time lapse is fast anyway, but it's such an eye opener with folks how fast they go together. We drive up and down the freeways every day wherever we live and see multifamily buildings. We see all kinds of things, and there's just stacks, piles of lumber all over the place. It rains. You're wondering why in the world the place is wood. It's framing for months. And it's like, and then all of a sudden you see one that's going up in prefabricated light gauge steel, and it's like, oh, I just drove by last week. It's done. It's amazing how fast it really is.
Yeah, and we preach a quarter of the time, a quarter of the manpower. And I truly we've seen that.
That's a great saying.
We see that happening on job sites. So the Hyatt place, I think we're under 50 days, and they had the whole entire structure complete. 6 stories, right? Just absolutely crazy that something can go up that quick. And really, I think one of the things that I've loved the most about it is some of the trades behind us, the concrete guys that are pouring the decks and things like that are always, we've all been in construction, right?
Yeah.
Hey, it's going to take me a week to do this floor. And everyone's like, sure it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, sure it is. Sure it is. We'll be out here in 3 weeks. And we get to that last day like, hey, are you guys going to be here tomorrow? We need concrete poured Friday because I want to be back on this thing Monday to turn this around in a week again. And so it's been fun to kind of poke at the other trades and say, hey, come on, we're not joking. Let's get this thing going.
So now that you've brought it up, you brought up the other trade partners, your MEP trades.
Yeah.
It could be anything, your finishes, your drywall guys, whatever. Fear is a big driver in kickback that I've always gotten. Fear from a developer, fear from a GC, fear from those other trade partners. When we have convinced in the past a developer to go light gauge steel, and it goes out to bid, the first thing that everybody says is, "Oh, well, our price is going to be higher because it's light gauge steel."
We're going to double it. Yeah.
And it's so unfair because, I mean, it's a residential subcontractor doing something that they haven't done before and working with something that
scares them a little bit.
So how do you combat the fear?
It, I think we're very open to shop tours. We love having people come to our shop and showing them what walls look like and say, hey, this is really what the process is. This is what a wall looks like. But I think other than that is kind of talking through some of the things that they have to do. Typically, right, the material might cost a little bit more to switch from a wood frame for an electrical guy, right? He has to buy an MC cable as opposed to a Romex cable. So there are little costs there. But then I say, okay, how many holes do you drill in studs on this house? How many hours do you spend doing that? And let's call it 15 hours, 16 hours. By the time he counts them all up, and I go, zero. You're gonna zero. I will punch a hole. One of the things we love about FrameCAD is, for those who don't know, if you don't know, we can put the service holes wherever we want to in the wall panel with some restrictions, but it's pretty open. Yeah. And so now we'll say, hey, you tell us how high you want all the holes run in the house. We'll pre-punch them there, or in the building, we'll pre-punch them there, and you have to drill 0 holes moving forward on the project. So make sure there's that double cost savings there. Other than that, I think that's probably been the biggest fear we have, is I think, it's like a 2x4 and then have to do a bunch of extra cutting that just doesn't exist and isn't there.
Yeah. You don't have to come back, after it's been framed and straighten walls and and shave and, patch lumber. And it's a completely different way of thinking. So, you talked about cost, and I want to get into that a little bit. You mentioned that you were kind of a numbers nerd over stuff. So one of the things that I've really pushed is that you're right, and nobody's ever going to back me into a corner on the cost of cold form steel being slightly higher than wood, item for item. Okay.
Hey, go to Home Depot, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what I'm always saying is that it's not, if you're looking at it on a line item cost basis, we're always going to be
always going to be high.
But if you look at it from a pro forma basis, if you look at it and take all of the aggregate savings that come into it, you're going to overcome, if not 100%, the vast majority of
those costs. Yeah, we really think that's happening.
Yeah. And so it's that developer piece, and they don't know what they don't know. That's really what it is. We've built with lumber since 1924.
Yeah.
And it's comfort. And I know that they've made their wealth and generated their wealth with wood framed buildings. And so now it's like, oh, this is just automatic. We're going to do this, and it's going to be. But when they see the advantages and can really pencil in everything, it's amazing. Do you find that to be true?
We do. I'm totally.
And please, I want you to just whip them out there.
I'm a little nerdy. I got my little cheat sheet here with me. And so, I think there's a couple things that aren't thought about. Like you said, you're going to look at it, and just most general contractors, most owners want to say, okay, what's the price for cold form steel? Let me see the quote. Let me see the quote for wood. They're going to look at just those bottom line numbers and then move on. Some of the savings that I think aren't being picked up, that guys are missing a lot of the times, one is schedule overall.
Yep,
so
absolutely,
quarter of the time for framing. And that equates differently for every project. Usually on hotels, 120 keys, we'll usually see a 4 to 6 week time savings there. We've done some small retail buildings, and I've seen some crazy results. Crazy results. We weren't quite expecting. We had predicted it'd be about four or five, a 2,500 square foot unit. Their last build, 9 weeks. They saved 9 weeks on their schedule.
How long did it take you to put the structure up?
The
2,500 square foot.
2,500 square foot. I think that the framers had everything buttoned up in 2.5 days. Was all it took them. And we pre-sheathed, had pre-air buried it, so we added a whole bunch of other components. So it wasn't just, hey, correct, you got walls. It's you got walls that are dried in, finished. MEP trades and everyone else can be rolling on the inside ahead of time. And so some extra savings there, but it was 9 weeks. I think they had predicted from groundbreaking to turnover was going to be like 84 days or something like that, and we dropped it to, it was like 120.
Yeah, but look at those numbers alone right there.
Yeah,
9 weeks. 9
crazy.
weeks. Let's take all the construction. Let's take all of the interest rates. Let's take all that stuff out of it. You're open. You're selling.
You're selling already.
You're making money 9 weeks early.
9 weeks. Yeah. So I think that's one time schedule. And like you said, there's a bunch of other things that kind of dial back into that time saving. So one, your building's open faster, which means it's a hotel. What do they say? Beds and heads.
Yeah.
Heads and beds. Heads and beds. That's the way. Heads and beds quicker. You're a retail person. Your stuff's getting sold quicker. Insurance savings we'll see not only on general conditions. We should see general conditions coming from a general contractor, but builder's risk, switching from a cold form building into or combustible building to a non-combustible building, from the wood to the cold form steel. We see savings there. And then I think the bigger one that's really being missed is the long-term property savings. We're hearing 40%. So when an owner now closes, he's insuring a building that has less risk of catching on fire. Insurance companies are going to give you a way better deal for that.
That's what they do.
Yeah, that's what they do.
It's all about risk.
It's all about risk, right? So that suddenly reduces those. So I ran and this is very much anecdotal, right? So a McDonald's on average costs between $1.3 and $2.3 million to build is what they figure.
Okay.
So construction loans, all those kinds of things, you have that happening. 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks is what we tend to say if we'd save on the schedule.
Okay.
If I was taking just general conditions at a small general contractor, $5,000 a week, 5 weeks, $25,000 saved. Owners should be seeing that directly from a general contractor.
Correct.
You're on my job site less time. It shouldn't cost me more money. It should cost me less money.
Right.
Savings on loan types, it kind of depends. And this one's kind of a rough one, right? It depends on what kind of loan you're getting and how you're financing it. You usually see about 17% time savings on there on a $1.5 million project, right? There's another $34,000 you're going to save just in interest payments.
Correct.
Not because the building gets made quicker. Let's see. Long-term insurance savings, that's one that I can't get an owner to tell me.
Yeah.
Ever.
I
get smiles, and don't worry, it saved me money.
And unfortunately, that's the only place we're ever going to get that info.
And that's good. What I know is they're smiling, and they're happy to do it again, which means I know they saved a good chunk of money.
20%.
Yeah, you've heard
a 20% annual savings in general property.
General property. Yep. I think there's some intangibles that aren't looked at, mold, rot. If there is a fire that does happen in the building, the likelihood of there being damage, there's a lot of things that are reduced that owners just aren't looking at. To say, hey, let's say there is a kitchen fire. You built a retail place like a McDonald's, there is a kitchen fire, all of a sudden, less of the building is burning down. Hopefully not the whole entire building. A wood building, I'm telling you, it's catching on fire. Expect that whole thing to burn down.
Yeah, it's going to.
You to lose time. Your building's down, insurance, all the headaches that come there. Just looking at builder's risk. So builder's risk, $1.5 million. The average is about 3% is what builder's risk cost is. You're going to reduce that 50% is what we're hearing. I've got a project right now that we're trying to work with it's an apartment complex. It's actually 75%. I feel like I had never heard that high of a number before when they came to us and said, hey, our builder's risk guys are saying $4 million for the wood building or $1 million for a non-combustible building.
It's a substantial, regardless of whether it's that or it's 50%. It's a massive number.
Massive number. So let's just say on the McDonald's, that's another $22,000. So if I'm looking at all of that and then saying McDonald's now an average building makes $2.7 million a year. Turn that into weeks, $51,000 a week, $51,900 a week. 5 weeks is $259,000 of extra burgers sold. So then I look at it and say, hey, all together, we put all those things together, we're looking at $250,000 you're going to save at a minimum. Let's say we shrink that to 9 weeks. that jumps to $450,000, or 475 is probably a better number there. So all of a sudden you say, holy cow, there's a potential to be able to save $200,000 to $400,000 on a small commercial building. Like, why would you not take that risk?
Yeah.
I would. And then the question always, okay, well, how much more really is wood than steel? Right, because that's really or steel the wood. Because right, you want to say, okay, you're telling me I'm going to save $200,000, but I have to pay for your product that you say keep saying is a little bit more. How much? We really see about a 15 to 20% more just on our portion of the project. That's not the whole project. So on a retail building that is 2,500 square foot to 3,000 square foot, let's call that $150,000 is about what the structure costs. It's $20,000. So let's drop that. You only save $230,000.
Yeah. And we haven't even thrown in. And mind you, on a McDonald's, on something like that, this isn't as big as when you get on one of your mid-rise buildings, but waste disposal.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Waste disposal. And I've only seen this, had a chance to dig into it one time, and it's something I want to get more data on, is the difference in concrete. How much less concrete from a light gauge steel build, 6-story, 7-story building, as opposed to, first of all, you can't do one out of wood.
You can't even get the building up.
Yeah. But the difference in footing size, and steel in the foundations and those kinds of things, it can be substantial.
It can. It really significantly lighter. We always, as we kind of work through that conversion, if we're late, I always feel bad because the engineer is always like, well, if we would have known about this at DD drawings or SD drawings, like I would have completely designed the footers differently and you would have saved some money. But on those early ones, right, it's a big cost savings that has to also be put into place there. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to chase this rabbit. You talked about if we picked that up in the beginning. This is a completely design-led system.
It is.
The wins are all made
ahead of time, way ahead of time, before the building's even close to being built, and having the ability to foresee that. Toyota, the guy figured out how to mass produce cars at a cheap rate. And you look at things, one of the things that they often talked about was, hey, we want to know how our car goes together. We don't want some guy out in the factory figuring out, hey, this tie rod's a little short, what do I got to do? Or a little long, I want to shave it. No, we need to know way ahead of time that the part is going to fit, that it's going to be perfect, so that as it runs down the line, it never stops.
Yeah, can you imagine trying to build a car that way?
Yeah, well, Model T, right?
Exactly.
Luckily, we're all not driving Model Ts anymore. I always joke around about that, the construction industry. If I look at all the other industries around us, and you go back to that 1924, hey, dimensional lumber, this is the great new invention in construction. And I'm like, crank phones. And we're
we go right back to flip phones. People still carry flip phones. Better be careful. Well, what do you think about that? That's part one of our discussion with Joe Doxey, FrameCAD Division Manager with Douglas Colony. We could have gone on for hours and hours and hours. Wouldn't do that to you and wouldn't really want to do it to myself. Join us next episode in 2 weeks for part 2 with Joe Doxey from Douglas Colony. You've built it the old way. Now let's go build it better. See you next time.